Good evening. Welcome to the Chandler City Council meeting of Thursday, November 8th, 2018. Want to welcome everybody to the City Council. Appreciate your involvement with your city government and would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Tibbs Rainey.
Here.
Vice Mayor Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember McClymans.
Here.
Councilmember Rowe.
Here.
Councilmember Wong.
Yeah.
Councilmember Harkey.
Here.
Councilmember Stewart.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The invocation this evening will be led by Kevin Hartkey, Councilmember Kevin Hartkey, Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Renee Lopez.
Please join me in prayer. Lord God, I thank you for the opportunity for so many to come and speak tonight. I thank you for our community, for our leaders. We ask, Lord God, that your blessings would be upon this meeting and that all that is said and done would be honorable, would be respectful in your sight and in the sight of our community. We just ask your blessings upon our city, upon our communities, upon our leaders, and across the state. And just thank you for this opportunity to gather and to make decisions about the welfare and better being of our community. So I ask all these things in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Please join me in reciting our pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, council members. Next item on the agenda, council, is the consent agenda. We do have one action item today. What's your pleasure on the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Councilmember Hartke.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda of the November 8th, 2018 City Council meeting. I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Hartke, second by Councilmember McClymans. Further discussion on the consent agenda. Council, please vote the consent agenda.
Mayor,
Councilmember Rowe.
I'm going to vote no on item number 1.
Okay. Councilmember
I
Stewart.
have a conflict of interest on 45,
45.
42.
42, conflict. Okay, we'll note that. Okay, council, please vote.
I also want to vote no on 42. I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
Clerk, please note, Councilmember Wong will be a no on item 42. Okay.
Motion to approve the consent agenda passes unanimously with the exception of item number 1 with Councilmember and item 42 with Councilmember Wong voting no and Councilmember Stewart declaring a conflict of interest.
Very good. Council, the next item on the agenda, it's a consent agenda. It's Preliminary Development Plan PDP 18-0009 Banner Project, A, for site layout and building architecture for the development of a hospital campus, including a medical tower on approximately 18.3 acres located at the northeast corner of Alma School and Willis Road. At this time, council, we will go to staff for a presentation.
Evening, Council. Item before you is PDP 18-0009 Banner Project A. This is a request for preliminary development plan approval for the site layout and the building architecture for a development of a hospital campus, including a medical tower for about 20 acres located at the southeast corner of the Loop 202 and Alma School Road. While this is the PDP, which is really the design side of Chandler's approval process, I'd like to take a few minutes, if I can, to just kind of walk back through a little bit of zoning history, effectively kind of walking us through to how we got to where we are today. Usually we start with our general plan. So the slide before you is the 2016 general plan. You can see the subject site. It's highlighted in that red square. It's hard to see the scale, but it falls within that neighborhoods category. There is text within the general plan that identifies kind of the appropriateness and consideration for community commercial zoning along freeway corridors and the arterial intersections. Important to note that although the subject site was zoned prior to the adoption of the 2016 general plan, its zoning was consistent with the 2008 general plan and remains consistent with the 2016 general plan as well. Probably walk back to about 2005. The subject site is highlighted in that red box, and it came forward as a kind of two-part request back in 2005. First was an area plan amendment to the Alma School Place area plan, amending the subject site and its kind of sister parcel to the east from office and single family to mixed use office, retail, and residential condos on that property as well. There was a rezoning case that paired with that. It was parking crossing zoning. It came forward with a PAD for office, from office and single family to mixed use. A couple important things about this zoning case. It was the kind of where the 60-foot mid-rise overlay came to be. It involved the northern kind of half of the subject site as well. It was the first time that you saw the inclusion of and reference of the C2 Community Commercial District zoning. The subject hospital request this evening is a permitted use within that C2 zoning, and that zoning kind of first comes to be back in this 2005 zoning case. There was a development plan that was shown, included about 170,000 square feet of office space, 35,000 square feet of retail, and just under 300 units of condominiums that included this live work you can see in that kind of knife edging into the middle of the subject site. A couple years later, the site came back before council for approval in 2008 under Parkland Crossing. It involved another area plan amendment, mostly centered on the kind of eastern parcel, not the subject parcel, but it amended that area plan from medium density residential on the east and the office and retail on the west to high density residential. You can see kind of in color the knife edge units, about 18 of those units kind of knife edged into the subject site and included this live work concept. The rest of the Parkland Crossing office and retail that surrounds that piece remained virtually the same as the 2005 case, and the zoning kind of just carried along in 2008. Most recently, the site came back before council in 2012 under another area plan amendment and then what was known as the Banner Health Center zoning case. The area plan amendment simply involved removing the live work component that was that knife edge in the middle of the site, removed it, took it to consistent retail, commercial, office uses in there, and then had the zoning case that reaffirmed a couple things. It reaffirmed that 60-foot mid-rise height on the northern, we'll call it the northern half of the subject site. It also reaffirmed the C2 zoning uses on that northern site, as well as the balance of it, identified the medical office in the kind of current phase of development in 2012. It also had the zoning case that went with it and PDP on about the 10-acre piece of that 18-acre site. That PDP back then had a phase one of about a 22,000 square foot single-story medical office building, and then a second phase of a two-story that all total would be about 87,000 square feet of medical office space. Only phase one was built and is existing today. Phase two was never built. At the time in that 2012 case, there was a phase three that was identified, trying to put kind of an expectation around what was going to happen on the property. And at the time, it identified about 167,000 square feet of medical office that would occur both in these two phases that you see on the southern half of the site, and then a future phase up in the north. Again, all totaling about 167,000 square feet. Important to note that in that 2012, the northern half was identified as requiring a future PDP. And that's ultimately kind of what leads us here tonight. Again, the underlying property is zoned PAD, C2 uses. The hospital is a permitted use in that C2 list, and tonight we're here with a PDP. This is the 2018 proposed plan. This is kind of the first phase of that proposed plan. Two phases are proposed. You'll see it in the attached development booklet and the exhibits. I'll kind of just highlight this first piece of it right now. The request before you is for PDP approval for a hospital campus. Phase one will include about 245,000 square feet of a hospital building that encompasses about 96 beds, and that four-story tower at the northern edge falling within that approved mid-rise overlay area. There's a phase two with a hospital tower expansion west of the four-story phase one. Includes about another 82,800 square feet of space. About 60 more beds come into that mix. All told, with both phases, when you look at the existing single-story facility and then both phases of the proposal this evening, it encompasses about 349,000 square feet of building area and totals about 156 beds. As we went through this process, again, it's a PDP, so we're looking at site design, we're looking at building architecture, we're looking at landscaping. Ultimately, as we went forward to Planning Commission, this is one of the exhibits that is in the development booklet, simply to give you a reference of the architectural style and materials, level of quality and such. Important to note that they continue to draw from the architectural kind of expression that was established with the original phase that exists today in that single-story 22,000 square foot building. As all processes like this, we go through the public hearing process, we go through neighborhood meetings, we end up at Planning Commission. This was scheduled for public hearings back in September. At the time, we started getting input from the citizens' concerns, and ultimately, Planning Commission and City Council continued the request. Council continued it from the September 13th meeting to allow for some additional time for community outreach and community input. Since September 13th, the applicant has conducted various different forms of community outreach. I believe in their presentation they're going to walk through kind of exactly what they've done, so I'm not going to hit those. But ultimately, we ended up at Planning Commission in October, on October 17th. The item was an action item and had a significant amount of community input, referencing concerns of traffic, the helipad, just kind of building scale, things like that. I believe neighbors here, they're here to speak this evening. Reference what they're going to be speaking. Planning Commission did move forward with a recommendation of approval. A lot of discussion. They ended up adding a series of conditions at that meeting. They added conditions 7 through 10 of the PDP, and they all kind of referenced around building architecture. They added a condition that required some additional articulation to occur on the facades on the north and south of the expansion, and then wrapping the stone material around the edges of the western face of that future expansion. As well, because of some discrepancies of exhibits that were within the development booklet, they wanted to put some clarity around where the helipad was going to be, and so they put a condition on requiring that the helipad be located on the roof. Following Planning Commission, staff has added two conditions that I'd like to highlight. Condition number 11, both of them have to deal with the Alma School Willis Road intersection, but condition 11 referenced upgrading the intersection signals, upgrading signal heads to provide the ability for protected left turn movements. And then second, improving the intersection to redo the median and lane striping to, right now, the third lane drops on the north side of Willis. The improvements would end up carrying the three lanes southbound through Willis and ultimately dropping the lane by Maplewood. So those conditions are in with the recommendation for approval. I know I went through a bit of zoning history, but again, the site is zoned, and so to bring it back kind of to focus for this evening, this is a request for PDP approval for the Banner Project A, site layout, building architecture for that hospital campus. Planning Commission staff do recommend approval. I am aware that council was wanting some information regarding kind of the economic impact that a project like this would provide. So at this point, I'm going to ask Mike Miranda, our Economic Development Director, to step up here and provide that kind of synopsis of the economic impact, after which I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I was made aware that to staff that there were some questions surrounding the economic impact of this project. And so staff went forward and conducted economic and fiscal impact analysis of the proposed project. High-level impacts, direct, indirect, and induced over a 10-year period approximates additionally 678 new jobs within the community, payroll benefits of approximately $340 million over 10 years, and direct economic outputs of approximately $700 million for the project. So happy to go into details on any questions you may have around the economic impact analysis and add additional clarity.
Council, if you have questions on economic impact, now would be the time to ask those questions of Micah. Thank you, Micah.
Thank you.
Proceed.
At this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, questions. Vice Mayor.
So, when you talked about the zoning in 2005, was it 2005 that it was C2 zoning?
Mayor, that is correct. It was the first time that the C2 became referenced on the site.
Okay, and it was changed at that point?
It was.
To C2? Okay. So under C2, the uses, hospital is considered one of the uses for C2, is that correct?
Mayor, that's accurate.
Okay, and the helipad versus heliport, so since it's C2, hospital, helipad is allowed as part of C2, or is it a use permit, or how does that work with the helipad?
Through the mayor and council member, that's a vice mayor. That's a excellent question. So our zoning code identifies in our definition side of our zoning code, identifies heliport. You're not going to find helipad. And in our table of permitted uses, also contained within our zoning code, is the heliport reference. Important to note that in the heliport in the table of permitted uses, that it is only considerable by use permit. It's not allowed by right anywhere. It's considered by use permit in C3, I1, and I2. Again, there's no reference of helipad in there. Our table of permitted uses is a table that identifies where land uses can go in the city from a primary use standpoint. So when we think about a heliport, there are things that are associated with a heliport that include support facilities, fueling, hangars, places for attendants and things like that. Those all kind of encompass a heliport. When a helipad, such as tonight, part of a hospital, it's really considered ancillary. And so the table of permitted uses doesn't apply to ancillary uses. Kind of as an example, bulk chemical storage isn't allowed by right in the city of Chandler. It requires zoning approval to do so. Laundering plants aren't allowed by right, and even, say, plasma donation, of all things, isn't allowed by right in the city of Chandler. All those things happen also in a hospital, but we don't go through separate zoning approvals for those. They're all considered a part of, but ancillary to, the primary use of hospital. Helipads don't have any of the support structures that support facilities that a heliport does. It absolutely can seem confusing in code that it references one but not the other. But the zoning code, not meant to be kind of stuck into the word, but really the intent of what that code intends to do, and that's to guide primary use and not all the ancillary uses.
Okay, so, and again, per the code and reading between, I say, lawyerese or between the lines, that a helipad is allowed with a C2, you said C2, I2, I3, and multiple uses, but as long as it's not a primary. As long, a helipad would be allowed as long as it's, again, not the primary use or the primary intent for that facility, but an ancillary use, right?
Correct. Helipads, and for the 20 years I've been here, helipads, when they are ancillary to a primary use that's permitted, such as where Chandler Regional has a helipad, there was a women's health facility that was approved in, I think, late 99, early 2000, never actually built, but it included a helipad as well. Heliports is the primary use to require that use permit in C3, I1, and I2.
And so for that reason, since it's kind of ancillary use, do helipads require any noise contour mapping at all? Okay. And then you also talked about the mid-rise overlay coming in. There seems to be a lot of confusion. We received some emails too on different heights. So can you define what a mid-rise overlay allows, building height, and regarding ancillary equipment on top of the building?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, another good question. So mid-rise overlay is simply a term that is used to define the zoning tool used to get above 45 feet. Chandler, we're limited to 45 feet in building height. If you want to go higher than that, you got to seek and get approved a mid-rise overlay. Starting back in 2005 was when the first kind of the inception of the mid-rise overlay on this subject site. Part of the mid-rise overlay, it allows you to go above 45 feet, but you got to spec what your building height is going to be. Back in 05, and it carried and was reaffirmed in 2012, that height was limited to 60 feet. Now, building height, we measure it to the top of the parapet. Quite often you'll have mechanical penthouses and things that go above that, but the average building height, kind of defined by the building parapet, becomes that line at which we measure to.
Okay, so 60 feet is max parapet height,
Correct.
building height for this. Again, some ancillary equipment above it, but 60 foot. Okay,
Correct.
Thank you. That's all the questions I had for.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Stewart.
For everybody, Can you define what a parapet is?
Sure, and it is the top of the coping of the building. So you're going to have a
Coping
roof.
is what?
It is the edge. There's usually a metal coping that is the top edge of that building. So you're going to end up with a building, and you're going to have a roof on top of it, and that's what the water hits and it sheds off. It's always going to have a slight slope to it, and then there's something that basically hides all that flat roof material. That edge that comes up is the parapet. It is what screens all the stuff that is above in that roof deck. There's a coping that's on top of that, and we measured to the top of that. The coping is simply the metal material at the top of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Hartke.
So I'm going to ask you a question, then I'll go back to the applicant to get the rest. But there's been a lot of questions and seemingly confusion on the frequency of helicopters visiting the helipad. And I've heard several numbers through the rendition, and this is not to ask you that question, but do we have the ability to make a statement or to stip the usage or a limit of visits on something like that? Is that something possible for us, or to do that if that was desired?
To the mayor, I would probably defer the legal aspect of that question to the city attorney, but applying a stip like that to a PDP, the PDP, we are looking at the design aspects of it, so site design, landscaping, and building architecture. So if there's a link to the site design, it can be a PDP stip. I'd probably struggle to find that link in a use side of it.
Okay.
And if I may, Mayor?
Yes, City Attorney.
Councilmember Hartke, along with Mr. Mayo's statement, that would be a more proper stipulation to go in a zoning ordinance rather than the PDP. Quite honestly, it would be impossible to regulate. Even if it were, I would not recommend it. I don't think it, and again, you're talking about emergency services and things when they're needed.
Thank you.
Is the applicant here? We can get your name and addresses for the record.
Absolutely. Adam Baugh, 2525 East Arizona Biltmore Circle. With me is Kip Edwards.
Good evening. I'm Kip Edwards. I'm Vice President for Facility Services for Banner Health, 2901 North Central Avenue, Phoenix.
With us today, we also have our traffic consultant as well as the helicopter consultant. So to the extent that there's questions that maybe are more of a technical nature, you can ask them directly. Normally, we try to be brief for the council presentation. Given the level of questions and concern that this has created, I think it's probably more important for me to give more detail than I would typically in a presentation like this. If you would bear with me, we have some slides we'd love to show you. We'll walk through our presentation, and we'd love to have a few minutes on the back side after the neighbors present to answer or clarify any comments. And there'll be a bit of a dual presentation with both Kip and I together. I want to point out that this is not a zoning case. That decision was made a long time ago, and this is a use that is allowed on the property today. Just want to repeat that once more. This is not a zoning case. I appreciate staff's recommendation of support, and I appreciate the Planning Commission's unanimous recommendation of support as well. One thing that's prudent to me is this exhibit right here. This is the boundaries of the property. This is the boundary of the mid-rise overlay represented there. And at the time, Banner had a plan for phase 1 and phase 2, and they knew there would be a phase 3. They guessed it might be 70 to 80,000 square feet. They guessed it also might be commercial. When I reviewed the PAD back then, it even talks about that hypothetical scenarios. And as part of a zoning case with the C2 uses, you get the full bundle of those uses that are allowed in that zoning district, which do include a hospital. The thing that's important to point out here is this is your C2, this is the actual language from the ordinance, and this is where it says hospitals are allowed in the C2 district. I point out this statement right here. Helicopter and ambulances are permitted as accessory to the hospital. If a helicopter facility was independent and operating by itself, that would be a different discussion and a different type of zoning inquiry. I think staff hit on the nail on the head here. We have gift shops, we have pharmacies, we have laundry components. Those are all necessary appendages of a broad hospital use. It's a necessary component of what we're proposing today. I'll turn some time over to Kip.
Thank you, Adam. Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, thank you for your time this evening. I'm going to just start with a little bit about Banner Health, a little bit more about the project. I think it's important to get a feel for what this project is. But it starts with understanding a bit more about Banner Health. A lot of you probably know us as a large hospital system, but we're really much more of an integrated delivery system now. We have clinics, we have urgent care centers, we have labs, we have surgery centers, we have 2,000 physicians. And what that's really saying is our job right now is to deliver care and take the care to the communities we serve, not to just have certain points on a map that people come to. This is a good example of that. This is proposed to be a medium-sized acute care hospital, a community hospital. It can't do everything. It's not a tertiary care center. It's not a quaternary care center. It's not a St. Joe's. It's not a Chandler Regional. It's not a Banner Desert. It's a relatively modest, medium-sized acute care facility. And as such, it offers certain services. You see those listed on the left. Services it won't offer and never will, because it simply will never have the facilities, never have the specialties stationed here, won't be the right thing for this site you see on the right. And particularly, this will never be a level 1 trauma center. So quite often we worry about, will the helicopter flights increase? The answer is no. The helicopter flights that are here, and you'll hear more about them in a second, are here to be able to transport certain patients away from the hospital that need a higher level care and they need it urgently. It's a relatively small number. We know this because we operate other hospitals that are similar to this. Will this ever change in the future? The answer again is no. This site won't accommodate change. It's about 18 acres. If we were buying a site for a 600-bed hospital or a 400-bed hospital, we'd be going after 60 acres, sometimes 80 acres, typically to allow it to grow. This site physically would never accommodate that kind of growth. As you know, it can't go up. And the beds we propose have to be within that mid-rise overlay. There's really no way to adapt this to anything but what we're proposing it to be as we start out. Another question that's been asked is why? Why do we need another hospital? There are hospitals down the road, but there are some facts. You know this is one of the fastest growing areas in the valley, and it's underserved right now for hospital care. I know our competitors are planning to build additional facilities in addition to us, but right now we have a large number of patients leaving the area, traveling up to 10 miles an hour to receive care. A lot of those are inpatients, a lot of those are emergency patients who may be driving to Banner Desert or Banner Gateway to receive their care. You notice I don't mention the competitors. They drive obviously to Banner facilities for their care. But important to us, we have 80,000 health plan members. That means they buy our insurance product that live in and around this area, 80,000. And all of those do have to go at least 10 miles away to receive their care. They can't receive their care. They have to go to a planned hospital or they get charged more. So they are making that trip and that travel. We want to serve those members much better. A bit about the project. You've heard the numbers. Again, what I really want to stress here is this build out is the build out. Nothing else would fit on this site. It maxes out the site. You know, it's a balancing act between building and parking, and this is what would fit, and nothing else really beyond that would ever fit in the future. The site plan itself, just a couple of notes. All of the entrances are existing entrances. We're not building anything new. So our main entrance to the hospital is off of Alma School. That's the entrance that exists right now that's utilized by the health center and was built in a way to share with the left half of the site as you enter as well. We also have an entrance off of Willis for the health center. We have a service entrance off of the back right now off of Willis as well, and that would remain our service entrance. And we'd also use it for emergency vehicles. Why? We try to separate those from patients and visitors arriving and have them have their own path. Plus, this is where they would come in and drop off in the back of the emergency room. The main entrance is here, the emergency entrance is here, and actually, I show you this because, again, you see it's a fairly small scale hospital. It's 4 stories within the mid-rise area. It's 2 stories in the rest of it. And it's very simple, and it's intended to be that. As you arrive, you can go to your right, park, and go straight to the emergency room, which you'll see right in front of you. It's not like going to a really big campus where you have to search around for that. It's meant to be simple, easy to use. Or you go to your left and you go to the main entrance if you're coming to visit a patient or come for some other services. Our clinic is here off to the right. The design is very Banner-like. If you've seen any of our newer facilities, we have kind of a standard. We use a very nice block pattern. We use a lot of parallel and kind of intersecting planes to create a nice look. We use lots of windows. We call this our waterfall. We bring a lot of light into the building to make it a pleasant experience for the individuals that visit our facilities. We've talked a bit about the expansion. This shows the future expansion. So here's the expansion of the bed tower. And we do have one module more of clinic space that we can build and fit on the site. And then again, we're done. We did receive some comments at the Planning Commission meeting asking us to rework the expansion portion of it. We've done some work with staff on that. We think we've done that to articulate the north side of the building all the way down. You can see that in this picture and in this picture. To rework the end of the building. So we brought more block walls into that end. We brought some windows in. We actually moved the whole stair tower over to make it a little bit more interesting as it appears from the school. So hopefully you agree. I think we've achieved a pretty nice looking hospital and a nice looking hospital for what it's intended. I'll turn it back over to Adam.
I think the thing that's important to highlight here is the PDP looks at architecture, landscape, grading and drainage, building forms and designs and colors. That's the very points that we've tried to accomplish with this. In addition to some of the things that we've even considered is how can we meet the required parking? Where's the location of the helipad? And what are the improvements that we can accomplish through this process? Back in 2012, when Banner zoned this, and when they completed those improvements, they already put in the infrastructure that's required for the entire boundaries of the site. That's the access roads and the driveways that exist today. There is capacity in the existing street work to combine it, to expand up to 3 lanes. And so Banner's been willing to do that from essentially the 202 southbound to about Maplewood Street, which is just south of the church. That's something that Banner's not required to do as part of this process, but one that they see as a benefit to the community, one that they've heard loud and clear responds to direct concern. And 2, or 3, I think it helps the hospital operate more efficiently. I know there's been quite a large amount of discussion related to helicopter, and I'd love to just, while we've said this time and time again, it's worth repeating once more. This type of hospital, given the size and the scope of what it's intending to serve, will have a projection of 2 to 3 trips a month. And someone said, well, how do you know that's going to be true? What do you base that evidence on? Dignity Health, Chandler Regional has so many more trips, and I agree, that is so many more trips, but that's like comparing an apple to a banana, 2 totally different types of hospitals, different functions, different sizes, different surfaces. In this case, we can look at Banner Gateway. Banner's hospital actually is a little bit larger. It's 177 beds. Last year had 31 trips, and it operates in substantially the similar facility as this one. Even Banner Ironwood is another good example of very, very low trips. So this isn't a made-up number. This is a fairly accurate estimation based on how they currently operate today. What they are not is like Desert Sam, like Banner University, or those types of facilities that have tremendously more trips of helicopters a day. This is not a heliport. This is a helipad. We don't have a helicopter stored here. There isn't a fueling facility. There is no hangar. When there's a necessity and an event inside this hospital that occurs unexpectedly, you must transport out rapidly. That's when you call in a helicopter. The average landing is about 2 minutes for landing and about 2 minutes for takeoff. Some people have asked the question, what does that mean relative to noise? And so we've taken some points. We've measured noise to the apartments to the east, noise to the first closest homes directly west, and noise of the homes to the south. And what we've been able to find is by locating it from the ground to the roof, we've actually improved significantly a lot of these noise differences. Just to give you some perspective, if these are in the 70-ish dBA range, which compared to a vacuum cleaner at 10 feet, or a lawnmower at 100 feet, or a noisy urban area during the daytime. The cool thing about this, though, is the infrequency of the helicopter. So these are noises that are already expected that are occurring in a residential neighborhood when you look at these types of arrows, but it occurs on such an infrequent basis that we are confident that it won't be a disturbance to the area. The other common concern we hear is related to ambulance traffic. And ambulance, I've learned quite a bit that I never thought I'd ever hear before. And we've had a chance to speak with the ambulance provider and understand, how do you operate? What is a code 2? What's a code 3? When do you turn on your sirens? When you don't turn on your sirens? And as part of that process, we've learned that they have about 10 trips per day ambulatory. That doesn't mean all 10 trips are running with the sirens full blast. In fact, most often not, they're actually not using the sirens unless they're about 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. It's a rare event compared to the number of times they actually bring them here. We've actually coordinated with the ambulatory provider and the apartment complex next door to make sure that our lights and our signs are turned off upon entering the property and don't actually open the gates for the apartment complex next door that are triggered by lights at times. So we've tried our best to make those accommodations and improve those things. The biggest concern I think I've heard, not to discount the others, but this seems to be the primary one, is the traffic impact. And I think this illustration is important here. This is a 2006 plan. It averaged, expected to show 7,142 trips daily with these types of peak times. The Banner plan shown in 2012 expected 4,900 trips. This new proposal with the medical clinic and the hospital at full build out would actually create even less trips, 4,556. So the question is, how does a larger hospital per square foot create less trips than a medical office that was smaller? The difference is the nature of those trips are completely and entirely different. Medical office trips are far more frequent. They're scheduled on a more regular basis, 10, 15-minute intervals, whereas a hospital, people are staying there longer. The other interesting component about this is that a hospital office, assuming it was to be built at 167,000 square feet, would have up to this much parking, 1,000 plus parking spaces. Compare that to a hospital, which requires significantly less. There's a reason. There's just not the frequency of trips related to a hospital as there are next to a medical office. It's also worth pointing out that the peak times for medical office will be the peak times that you experience in the area today. High in the morning, high in the evening, but it'd be throughout the day as well. A hospital has a different time of use. And what's interesting is you have different shifts. You have a morning shift, you have an early afternoon shift, and an evening shift. So the shift changes create a different traffic pattern that doesn't necessarily coincide with what is your peak time otherwise. And those trips are spread out through an 18-hour period rather than concentrated through what would be maybe a 12-hour period if this were a medical office. In light of the concerns we've heard, I've mentioned previously, but we are proposing to make some improvements from the south of the freeway down to about Maplewood Street. That's 3 lanes will be widened on the west side of the road. The other key component here, and this is the first time we heard at Planning Commission last month, was the difficulty turning left and heading north or turning left and heading south. It was the first time that had been articulated, and so we worked with staff and tried to understand, is there room? How is it done? Do we have to tear up road work to put new signalization in and new components? And we found a solution that allows us a chance to actually put those improvements in. So Banner is doing that as part of this process, which is noted in your staff report as a condition of approval. I'll summarize with this last statement. This is not a zoning case. This is a use currently permitted by right in the code. This is an architecture case. This is a site plan case. This is a landscape case. This is an access and parking case. We believe we satisfied all the legal requirements and standards associated with this use. It not only meets those requirements, but has substantial road improvements, a significant employer, and a very good community partner. Banner is an asset to the communities within they operate and will benefit many people in this area. Thank you.
Council, question of the applicant. I would like to go back to one of your earlier slides when you talked about either the 2006 case or the 2012 with the hypotheticals, and it said something about hospitals and it said something about helipad. Can you put that one back up on the screen?
Are you referring to this one right here or one?
No.
Oh, sorry. Perhaps was it this the slide you were considering?
No, it was
Okay, I don't know.
It was at the start of your presentation, and it talked about a helipad. That. What? Okay, so what document is this in, and what year was this document written?
So this is the PAD booklet that was submitted to the city, reviewed by this council, and approved by this council. This is just a little screenshot of that booklet.
2012?
2012. And so in that time, we said all uses allowed by right within the C2 zoning district. And, as it says a little bit later on, including professional, business, administrative, executive, medical, any other offices. It's those combination of uses. And you look at this chart from your city zoning ordinance, hospitals are allowed in the C2 district.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hartke.
Thank you. I've got a few questions, so bear with me. Some of these questions, I was at the planning and zoning meeting. I've talked with several residents. I've met with several residents. I've read every email from our residents. So some of this might just be a re-articulation or a clarification on the presentation that you've said, okay? So what stops this community hospital from adding psych or substance abuse services, trading out, so Apple's space, for example, and not doing surgery, but adding a psych ward or substance abuse? What's to prevent Banner from doing that?
That's a good question. That's probably one of the harder ones to answer. Likely it'd be the business case. It's hard to explain other than it would be a really bad mix and bad use of the hospital space for us. And we have a dedicated behavioral health hospital in Scottsdale that we just built a new 96-bed tower too. So we've actually built that elsewhere. We've built on at Thunderbird. So we've actually positioned those services at other locations. They tend to either go as part of a much larger facility or a dedicated facility. It'd be a weird mix for us to try to mix that into this facility. Also requires quite a bit different. You can't take a med-surg room and just use it for behavioral health. There's an entirely different code. You'd literally have to tear the thing apart to utilize it, and it's just configured differently. So it'd be really a bad, inefficient use of the facility.
Okay. Next question. I've got about 7 of them, so just stick with me. You said that about 80,000 people who live around this area would most likely use this, potentially use this hospital. I understand that often insurance policies, you pick either a hospital health provider, and it can be Dignity, it can be Banner. So why should this be here when there's a Dignity Health at 1.5 miles or 2 miles away? Why is this different in terms of health provided? Or explain that insurance piece that I tried to articulate.
Okay, that's again a good question. So these are Banner Health Plan members, meaning they're subscribed to our members. As such, we require members to utilize plan facilities, in-network facilities, Banner facilities. They can opt to go to another one, but they will pay a much higher price. So they may pay a $50, I'm not sure what the copay is for an ED right now at a Banner facility. If they go into a Banner facility, that might be a $500 copay if they went to the Dignity facility. So they're highly incented to utilize the Banner facilities. That's why they're driving up the desert and driving up to Gateway right now or elsewhere to use those facilities.
I'd actually wondered if it was
that's also why we want to give them a way to serve them within their community.
Okay. I'd actually guesstimated and was talking to someone today, and I guesstimated 100,000, but you're saying it's 80,000 that are potentially in this area that Banner is in their network.
80,000 that are in our health plan that buy our insurance product.
Okay.
That was the number we were able to pull out. There are many other Banner customers that are in and around this area that utilize our facilities that maybe, because there's other health plans that have agreements with that where they'd be allowed to utilize our facilities or want to use our facilities, but they probably have options to use others as well. So a United Healthcare, for example, might have an agreement with us. They might also have an agreement with Dignity, so they have a choice. So they would have options, but they'd still be, a lot of them will be Banner customers.
When will, if this passes, when will phase 1 be complete?
We would expect to open phase 1 in November of 2020.
2020.
Open for business.
So 2 years.
Yes.
And if this is passed tonight, is there any projection or what goes into the projection of phase 2?
It really depends. We don't have a projection for a start of phase 2. It really depends on how the growth continues, how well we do at attracting customers, because we have to attract customers here. They have choices. Some have fewer choices than others, but they still have choices. So it depends how this one builds up. So we'll be watching the volumes. If our volumes get high enough in this one, and then we'd start pursuing phase 2, but we don't have a projected date for that right now. My guess is, and I'm more the pessimistic one than our planners, I tend to say 3 to 5 years out, likely.
Okay. So at the P&Z meeting and in conversation with me, residents fear that I think the statement was made that Banner uses every square inch of their property to expand. So we've got a plan before us here. Is there any possibility of building a parking garage or anything else that doesn't come back to us or anything related to that beyond the plan that we're approving, can staff make further permissions for you to add to this campus back to this, or does this come back to a future council?
I don't know. I think it would require an additional, I'd have to defer to staff. Staff's made it very clear to us that they won't
We get
permit
Kevin,
a parking garage on that
we get
site.
Kevin Mayo to answer that question.
Mayor, Councilmember, the PDP ends up becoming that binding document. However, tonight, if it becomes appropriate to stipulate that any changes to this PDP would result in a PDP amendment, we can add that stip as well tonight.
Okay. So if this passes, I would like that added.
I'll drop the
If
stip.
that gets on there, so just please draft some language. So you covered my helicopter visit, and it sounds like you're basing that off of real numbers. I've heard people compare this to Banner of 2 per day. I've heard 3 to 5 per week. I don't know where the numbers have come from on that, but you're pretty solid on this is 30s per
Absolutely.
year.
We've used the exact same numbers from the first that we've been discussing all the way back to May and June. So we've never really wavered from that. We've said, we started out saying 24 to 30. I simplified that to start saying 2 to 3 a month to be a little bit on the high side. But we're able to draw those numbers off from a very similar hospital that operates in a very similar way and extrapolated. It's a little bit bigger hospital, but that hospital, even though it's bigger, had 31 flights last year.
Okay. 2 left. So ambulance. So obviously that's been a concern too, is not just traffic, but the noise produced from these. You said that they don't use sirens unless it's going over 10 miles an hour, or I assume if there is impeded traffic that they might use that, which might more likely occur during rush hour. Or is there any policy or procedures that once they get close to this hospital as kind of the magnet site that they would turn the sirens off? How does that work?
Well, in all cases, they will shut off sirens when they approach our medical center, when they come onto the grounds. All of our medical centers, that's always been the case. The reason we're able to say, we figure about 10 trips a day, 9 or so, 95% of those are probably going to run without sirens and lights, and because it's the level of cases, the type of cases. Those that have to run fast and hard with lights and sirens, they're going to a level 1 trauma center. They're going to Chandler Regional, they're going to Banner Desert, they're going to University Medical Center, Phoenix. They're not going to bring them there. These are outside ambulance companies, so they make these choices. But yes, they have those policies.
Would it do any good to have the fire chief address that procedure?
Thank you, Mayor. That's a great idea. Thank you.
If we could have Fire Chief Tom Dwickens address that question.
Mayor, Councilmember, we transported just over 8,634 total transports last year, 2017. Of that, only 8% were code 3 when we were going from a residence or a building to the hospital. And so the vast majority, 92% of all of our calls, we do not use lights and sirens, especially on the ambulance. On the fire trucks, it's 57% that we don't use lights and sirens, and that's really adopted, has been for the last 3 to 4 years.
Okay. And Mr. Chief Dwiggins, since you're up here, let me ask another question. So we have a trauma center hospital. I think someone wrote 2 miles away or 1.5 or whatever. So if you have any kind of a trauma case, are you going to drive by Banner and go to a trauma hospital? How does that work from an ambulance perspective?
Mayor, Councilmember, so we look at 2 categories. If we have a stable patient, the first thing that we'll always do is offer the patient choice. So they can go to any facility which they would like to go to. If the patient is unstable, we will take the patient to the closest, most appropriate facility. So close is first because a lot of the things that we're trying to do is meet certain time benchmarks, but then the capability of the hospital is next. And so because the Chandler Regional is a level 1 trauma center, we will bypass other hospitals and go there directly.
Okay. That didn't count in my questions. That was ancillary. So.
Okay, we'll give you a mulligan. Are you done with the chief?
Yeah, thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
So my last question, and I'm not sure, other than anecdotally or experience, if you can answer this, but I read a couple emails about concerns that, and maybe this is Chief Dwiggins, I'm sorry, but in terms of buses picking up students and then an ambulance going by, there's concerns on Willis that there were several bus stops. How do those work in light of ambulances and bus stops? It's not a question of who wins. We want everyone to win. But how does that work?
Mayor, council member, so anytime we're going through any school zones or if a bus is stopped, we stop.
Okay.
When we're going through the school zone, we actually turn the lights and sirens off and we go the posted speed limit until we come out of the school zone, and then we can go back to code 3. But as far as buses go, we will stop.
So there's no danger, we're not putting any children at risk because you abide by the speed limits through school zones, as well as if a bus has got its flashing thing out there, ambulances, fire engines stopped along with other traffic?
That is correct. In the 21 years I've been here, we've never had a single incident in the school zone or with the bus.
Okay, thank you. You were the best person. I cede the floor.
Vice Mayor Lopez.
So on Councilmember Harkey's question, I think it was 3, on the second tower, and this also may be another question with Kevin. So this PDP is the full phase build out, even though it's referred to, I think, as Plan A. That's one of the questions I did get.
Code name, Project A.
Code name a while back.
So better code names maybe.
Yeah, I know.
Aardvark, you can go with Aardvark. So this is intended to be, and was mentioned before by you, Kevin, that this plan, this PDP, is it for this. Any changes or any other expansions, other buildings to replace parking lots, surface parking, that would have to come again before Planning and Zoning and Council?
We would have to stipulate that. That's what I thought I heard you say, Kevin.
Mayor, Vice Mayor. Ultimately, there is some level of staff administrative flexibility built into a PDP. It sounds like it's a 2-part question. Is the phase 2 a part of this approval for ultimate PDP approval? Yes, the document contains what is necessary to constitute PDP approval for phase 2.
Okay.
Could minor things be done? Yes, if the concern is to try to narrow that kind of administrative malleability, we can stipulate it to really narrow that focus to any changes that would have to come back.
Okay.
And may I add, I mean, I think I'd heard a comment or concern that we could get bigger if we just added a parking structure. We could expand more square foot space. I want to point out that if that were ever considered, we'd be back in this process all over again. That isn't something that's allowed by this PDP today.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know how much everyone is following this or has looked, but when I originally met with your folks and talked about this project, there were some changes that had been made as you worked with Kevin, and maybe we could just very quickly just talk about what happened there. Originally, the helipad was supposed to be on the east side of the property, right on the ground, is that right?
Correct.
Yes. There's actually been a number of changes. Originally, we actually had a small parking garage in the front, and we reworked the site and tightened it up and managed it all to surface parking because we heard pretty quickly, no garages.
Yeah, and there's about 3 things that occurred on the east side of the property.
We actually here's the whole list up here that you can see. We actually took the hospital and pushed it further away from the east side to get a little bit more clearance from the apartments. We modified a lot on the east side because that's our support area and our mechanical area, and the concern was noise from those. So our emergency generators have level 2, they're called acoustical enclosures, so that they keep the sound way down. We pushed the cooling towers farthest away from the apartments on the other side of the central plant and actually lowered them, sunk them into a sump. So it's going to mask the sound, and we put extra quiet fans on them. There's a special fan you can use that lowers the sound. We were going to have a modular central plant. It's kind of modular type building. We changed that to an actual building so that it, one, looks better and encloses and masks the sound better. We did a whole list of things like that.
And it's also worth pointing out, I think the key point is relocating the helipad from the ground to the roof was a tremendous benefit to the apartments to the east. It actually had a little bit less noise attenuation to the homes, but more importantly, had a significant cost of banner, but one necessary to make this more appropriate. Beyond that, we've done the noise studies, the traffic studies, even reduced our tower that we thought would be for the helipad at 90 feet down to 80 feet. These are all things we've done in response to this process from staff, from the council, from the neighbors. We've analyzed traffic, we've done coordination. We've even, since 2 weeks ago at Plan Commission, now have agreed to install those left turn signals as appropriate on Willis Road. So there's a number of processes and changes that have been made along the way.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hartke.
So one more question. This is number 12 or 15. So with that left-hand turn, can we stipulate, or would you be willing to stipulate that would be put in at the onset of construction rather than waiting?
That's stipulated as part of the case right now, and so we wouldn't be able to get a certificate of occupancy, I believe, for these improvements until we've satisfied all those stipulations for the case.
But you're asking, would we do that up front? I think we're happy to do it at any time. As soon as there's a little bit of lead time, but as soon as we could, I don't see.
Oh, you're talking about prior to construction? Is that what you're referring to?
Rather than waiting at the end of the project, I think we do it as soon as we could.
I'm thinking like a Christmas present for the neighbors.
I think
we can get a bow on it.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you very much. Kip, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name.
Edwards.
Mr. Edwards. A level 2 hospital, there was some discussion about code 3. Thank you, Chief, for kind of clarifying some of those things for us. But a level 2 hospital, what are those generally? I know you might have covered that a little bit more, but are those going to be less, they're going to be for less emergency type things? Are they like broken arms or?
Yes, actually there's a slide up here that actually takes the definition out of the different levels. So they're going to be bumps, bruises, cuts, breaks, illness, stomach. Some people will come in with chest pains, and that's an example. If someone comes in with a chest pain, thinks it's something minor, and turns out they have something major, and we have to get them to another hospital quickly. That's when you would bring a helicopter and fly them out, possibly. But it's the type of things you see here.
contrast that.
The contrast is level 1. Those are gunshots, serious accidents that have occurred where there's major trauma. Trying to think of a good list of those. The big difference is at a level 1 trauma center, they have to have on staff present at all time all of the key specialists. They have to have free operating rooms. So it's a big facility. Takes about a year to get that level of certification, sometimes 2, because you have to put all of these things in place. Those are the things that this hospital would never support, space-wise or level-wise. And that's why the ambulance companies and the emergency transport, they know the different levels. They know where to take different types of patients.
Chief, if the level 1 trauma center were full, would you recommend somebody with a less serious injury to go to the level 2 so they wouldn't have to go up that Desert Sam? Or sometimes I'm sure they ask your men and your women, where should I go?
Mayor, council member, what we do on any type of trauma call and really any emergency incident is we have a computer within our trucks that we can do a hospital inventory. It'll show us all the closest hospitals. It'll talk to us about what their status is, whether they're open, if they're on diversion, and then it'll give us their capabilities. So based on what we're seeing with the patient, we can make that recommendation. If there's a question, then we call our medical director, which is a physician at Chandler Regional, and they'll make the decision for us as far as where to go.
Thank you. So, for example, if my son had appendicitis and I didn't want him to wait an hour at a level 1, a level 2 might be able to handle that?
We'd handle appendicitis at this hospital. That's general surgery.
Okay.
In fact, that'd be a good place to go because you want to get there quick, get some quick relief, get in and deal with the issue.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Edwards, one other question. Is there any plans for this, if this is approved? If there's any plans for this to be a specialty hospital of any type, or does that fall outside your
Plan to be a general acute care hospital.
Okay, so
That's really where the need is. Our specialty hospitals are already located at other locations, Children's at Desert, cardiac heart hospital at Baywood. So we've kind of already located those specialties, and they tend to locate at our larger facilities because, again, there's always other attendant needs that this hospital wouldn't meet. We'll have orthopedics there, for example. So break an arm, good place to come.
Thank you. Last question. You talked a little bit about sound barriers for, and I think Councilmember or Vice Mayor Lopez mentioned something about acoustics for the helipad, but I'm really interested. We had an issue with one of our data centers and cooling towers being that hum, that annoying hum. Is there anything we can stipulate to make sure that gets taken care of beforehand in the planning process to make sure that those are covered if this ends up going forward? All right, Mr. Edwards.
Through the mayor, councilmember, some of the changes that the applicant was speaking to, those have been done. So when they first came in, they didn't have that level of kind of sound attenuation on their plant. They do now.
Thank you. The next part of the meeting will be public feedback. We'll take the opposition first and then the support. The opposition has submitted there's a number of folks that have filled out cards in opposition, and I won't read all the names. There is a petition submitted from Carazal homeowners opposed to this. So those are mainly Chandler residents, all those. There is an online petition that I was handed this evening. That does have folks from other areas besides Chandler, but there was an online petition with signatures. The support I'll talk about when we get that. The leaders of the neighborhood group were gracious enough to assign speakers to cover this. We're going to give them about a half hour. They have 4 speakers. They're going to get 7 minutes apiece in lieu of 30 speakers getting 3 minutes apiece. There was one person that submitted a speaker card that wasn't part of the group submitted by the neighborhood leaders. And I didn't know if he still wanted to speak or if he was ceding his time to the neighborhood. It was Michael Ostermeyer. And I don't know, did you still want to speak at some point? Yes, ma'am. Okay, so we'll go with the group first, and then we'll let him maybe have 2 minutes. That'll give you guys like a full half hour. So I'll take these in the order they were given to me by the neighborhood leaders. And so the first speaker is going to have 3.5 minutes now and 3.5 minutes to close. So with that, so the first speaker, 3.5, then we'll go 7, 7, 7. Then he's going to come back and do 3.5. That'll be 28 minutes. Okay, so with that, we'll start with Eric Lee. And Eric, if we could get your name and address for the record.
Right. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Eric Lee, and I live at 1422 South Apache Drive in the Carazal development directly across the street, across Alma School from the proposed Banner Hospital, which I oppose. Thank you very much for meeting with us over the last couple of weeks. We really appreciate that, and for allowing us to speak for the neighborhood this evening. We've prepared some very brief presentations, brief technical presentations tonight, but before we jump into the substance of our analysis of this development, I want to present some general concepts. And for us, you'll notice this is a zoning issue. This is a zoning issue, without a doubt. I just want to say that at the beginning. So first of all, what is this not about? This is not about development. This is not a group that is anti-development. We all work in areas that depend on Chandler having a strong economy and jobs in order for us to live here. This is not about property rights. We believe in property rights. We don't need to be convinced. We feel that we also have property rights and are entitled to quality of life in our lives here in Chandler. And it's also not only about traffic. Traffic is an important part of this, but that is not by any means the only issue. So what is this about? I think there's two questions that guide our work on this. And the first question is this proposed hospital development appropriate in terms of zoning and safety for this heavily residential neighborhood? And the second question is how much faith should citizens in Chandler have in the zoning process? Let me take that first question. I'll go ahead and answer it for our group. We clearly do not think that that a development of this size and intensity discussed earlier by the applicant is appropriate, and we're not even sure that there is a need. We have been told that Banner's own market research indicates a highly lucrative market for them here in Chandler, but that is not the same thing as a solid needs assessment by the city stating that Chandler Regional and Mercy Gilbert, both within a few miles of here, are insufficient for the healthcare needs of Chandler's residents. So we're really in the dark on the real need for this facility, and must rely on Banner's own economic necessity. And the second point is that we feel strongly that we haven't received a solid notification in this process. Once again, this is a heavily residential area. We'll back out a little bit here and see that this property is wedged in a tremendously residential area adjacent to single family and multifamily. And so the point of the slide is this: there is no way that 20 years ago, when these neighborhoods were built here, that the city planners would have envisioned a hospital with helicopters landing and taking off and ambulances arriving at all hours of the day and night. This will affect our quality of life. Also, Banner's pattern of development is highly intense. These are builders. Notice how this facility is built up right next to the street. This is of tremendous worry for us, and makes it clear to us that our quality of life will be affected. And with that, I believe my time is up, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to kick it over to Nancy Ryan, who will discuss the zoning aspects of this.
Clerk, we could set that clock for 7 minutes for the next three speakers.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Ryan. I live at 1064 West Enfield Place. I have resided there for 18 years, and I happen to be a retired city planner. When we moved there, we did our due diligence before moving, and I've followed every proposal around the neighborhood. Again, most recently, I've had to research city files to really find out what's, I feel, the real story behind the project. I am in opposition. Based on what I found, we feel that there's been a switch made. You need, as the council members, need to honor your commitments from that 2012 rezone and PDP. It's a matter of trust to the community. Banner really should have been more transparent in what they identified as medical offices in 2012. We now realize Banner Project A is over 200% larger than what was approved in 2012. At the council meeting on August 16th, we were told Banner intends to build 2 medical offices in phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 3 will be commercial retail office uses with a mid-rise overlay allowing C2 zoning uses. Phase 3 may develop with approximately 80,000 square feet of office and or medical uses. So nowhere in the identification of phase 3 was hospital. Phase 1 and phase 2 were about 87,000 square feet. Phase 3 was supposed to be 80,000 square feet. The entire site, as it's built out, was supposed to be 167,000 square feet. Well, this site plan might be familiar to you, Mr. Mayor and Councilman Harkey, because you were on Chandler Council when it was approved. The approval comes before you requires conformance with that plan. Let me repeat this. The project is required to be in substantial conformance with Exhibit A. Back to Exhibit A. Here it says, development shall be in substantial conformance. This proposal is a substantial departure from that 2012 approval, and this substantial departure deserves an explanation by Banner, a full reconsideration by council, and definitely more input by the community. The proposal is out of scale with what was permitted in 2012. Show you this little chart. Now look at what has happened. The 2018 proposal dwarfs what was approved in 2012. It happens, it operates, it's twice the size and operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How did that happen? Here are questions I think the council members should be asking. Why did we not catch this significant change and bring it to the attention of you, the council, or the community? During the staff analysis, where's the data comparing the information you see before you? And where is the map that shows the mid-rise as it relates to the actual size of the building? Chandler's definition of a hospital also is flawed. There is no differentiation between medical treatment versus mental hospital or long-term addiction treatment or anything. All of those fit in that little box called hospital. And I'm happy to hear you asking questions about that, because what assurances do we have from the city or Banner that this won't automatically convert at some point in the future? We all know there's an opiate problem. 10 years from now, what is going to be needed to address things like that? Why would you give permission and approval to phase 3? You really shouldn't. It's time to ask how the project has doubled in size without your knowledge or consent, and where is it going to be in 10 years? What you do to honor your commitment and ensure that it does not morph into this enormous non-conforming project. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Kawar Hazad. Kawar, if we could get your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Khabar Azad. I live at 1432 South Apache Drive in Chandler, Carrollsville community, just opposite to the proposed hospital. I am an engineer by profession and a pilot, and I fly out of the Chandler Municipal Airport. I'd like to talk about the noise, safety, and lack of medical necessity of the proposed helipad. The noise. Applicant cannot force the pilots to fly at a minimum 500 feet altitude unless they have a FAA prescribed route on file, which they don't. Also, without a prescribed route, FAA allows helicopters to fly as low as 300 feet. FAA recommends approach to and departure from a helipad against prevailing wind. That is east-west in Chandler. That's why all your runways are mostly east-west. I do not know why they're proposing a north-south approach for the hospital. Pilots will rightfully disregard the applicant's suggested north-south approach and come in on FAA recommendation against the prevailing wind. FAA recommends a glide slope of 8:1 ratio. Thus, it is easy to conclude that as the helicopter will be approaching from any direction against the prevailing wind, it will be coming lower and lower toward the houses. And this diagram that I have over here for the 8-to-1 glide slope, there's an example here. 640 feet away, the helicopter would actually be at 160 feet above ground level. So the helicopter will go over populated area under the FAA recommendation, most of the time 300 feet, and at a lower altitude and much lower for communities closer to the hospital itself. Therefore, a noise study is in order, like the one that we have for the Chandler Municipal Airport. Chandler noise standards are followed in the airport zone. I wonder why we do not hold the same standards for residential zones. Very odd. Residents did not buy homes to live next to this noise. And we were never told of any such plan in the 2012 rezoning. Even the leaflet that was given to us doesn't say anything about it. Next, I'm going to talk about the safety aspect of it. Helicopters suffer from more accidents than airplanes. It's a study by International Helicopter Safety Symposium, it's done back in some years back. It actually says that it's actually 43 times more than aircraft. So the helicopters will fly, land, take off close to the houses and the apartment complex. We do not want this safety risk and danger in our residential area and are objecting to it openly and publicly. In case of a mishap, who will be liable for the loss of property and life? When we are on record in opposition to this proposal. By choice, we did not buy or build our homes next to airport or a helipad. Unlike, for instance, the solid carpentry people who were here a few days ago, and they were building, they're building in line with a runway. Their choice. So who is liable in case of a serious helicopter crash into residentials? Let's talk about it, the zoning for a moment, the lack of medical necessity. So C2 zoning does not permit helicopter operations, and zonings that allow it require use permits, okay? Now, here's the problem. Residents, just people like me, just ordinary people, when they look at charts, they don't make a big differentiation between helipads and heliports. I know that, but majority don't. That's the first thing. And secondly, we're not experts on zoning in the first place, okay? And if it says that it's gonna be changed into so-and-so, and it doesn't say a hospital, who cares? Ancillary for a hospital are doctors, nurses, diagnostic and treatment equipment. Helicopters are not an ancillary for a hospital, okay? And I'll prove that. Truly, the helipad here is for applicants' economic benefit, and I'll explain why. The applicant wishes to keep possession of the patient and keep them in their network as long as they can. Applicant has repeatedly said that the helicopter will not be stationed at the hospital because it's not a heliport. Well, calling and waiting for a helicopter will take longer than driving the patient to a more equipped Chandler Regional a mile and a half ago, distance. But then they lose possession. That's the problem. Banner will not gain economically if these critical patients don't stay in their healthcare network. Helicopter pilots, instructors, flight operators say that 24 to 32 flights per year is just not economical for investing in a helipad. Chandler Regional has 14 flights per week and they are level 1. Level 1. How come level 2 trauma center would generate mere 24, 32 a year? Word is out that in internal conversations, applicants' intentions are quoted as 3 to 5 flights that turns out to be 156 to 260 flights per year. This is a bit more realistic, low average number in experts' opinion, but contrary to what the applicant has been admitting publicly. Applicants must provide the city and the residents with realistic numbers based on factual flight data, not from their own hospitals, but with comparable hospitals as well, from other networks. City should be doing that. It should be our responsibility, me being part of the city and you being part of the city. In summation, this helipad is an unwarranted concession for C2 zoning. Neither a use permit was requested nor issued. A helipad was never mentioned in 2012 PDP approval. It is a serious noise nuisance which should have been scientifically measured and not hand-waved. It is a terribly dangerous proposition for dozens of communities and risking city liable for claims in case of a flight accident where there is so much public opposition in front of you. In this proposal, helipad is a tool to keep the patient in Banner network for primarily economic benefit and not medical benefit. So the question here is, why should Chandler allow undue noise discomfort to its residents, endanger them, and risk liability claims, and all that to give Banner some economic benefit? Mr. Mayor, you were there in 2012. Did they ever mention a hospital and a helipad to you? Thank you.
Okay. We'll talk a little bit more about some of your stuff. John Wilson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is John Wilson. I live at 1062 West Maplewood Street. I've been there for 15 years, and it is 750 feet from the subject property. Firstly, I'd like to talk about traffic safety. Also, you guys have this pamphlet. It's identical. Whatever is easier for you to read, your monitors or the paper. First off, did a study. I went to the Chandler Police Department website. They recommend this LexisNexis website. It tracks the police responding to various accidents or any crime at all. Just filter it down to what you need. I filtered on accidents. They're broken into 3 categories. There's non-injury, injury, and hit and run. In the first 9 months, which is 39 weeks of the year, there were 44 total accidents where police responded. And that's at the Alma School 202 and the Alma School Willis. That's roughly a little over 1 per week average. Of those 44, 14 of those were injury accidents. Call it 1/3. So every 2 weeks or so, 2.5 weeks, you're getting an injury accident. Here's one from yesterday. 4:40 p.m. yesterday, injury accident. Woman that you can't really see. It looks like she has some head trauma. Willis Road. This is on Willis, looking directly east. Here's the Banner building that's existing. You can see the entire Willis Road is blocked off. So the question would be, if an ambulance, unrelated to this accident scene, were trying to get to the hospital, how would they do that? If we go back not so far, let's go back 1 week to last Wednesday, 7:00 p.m. This is looking directly south on Alma School. This is Willis Road. This is a police cruiser blocking the right turn lane. This is the accident vehicle. The westbound Willis is completely blocked off. So people that wanted to get home could not. And this road is backed up all the way to Germain, bumper to bumper. So they have to go all the way down to Talante, the next quarter mile-ish, to be able to circle around to their neighborhood. Let's talk about volume. 39,000 current trips per day at the Willis-Alma School intersection. Banner stated this 4,556 additional trips per day, which is 11.6% increase. This does not include any future development at Alma School 202, the northwest corner or the northeast corner that are currently going through zoning, planning, changes. I've heard some sort of gymnasium workout place, and I'm not sure all what's going on there. But from Chandler Boulevard, as far south as you can go to Alma School ends, it's 2 lanes each way. Pretty soon, it'll be just a parking lot. The church has quite a bit of parking, quite a bit of vehicle traffic. mostly Sundays, but also Saturdays. It is so packed, and people don't understand the law, but the city put up this sign. Arizona Revised Statute 28-751, turn into rightmost lane. This is, if you go this way, this is westbound Willis, people leaving the church, turning north on Alma School, and a vast majority of them want to get onto the freeway 202 and go west. So they tend to turn like this. This is me. They put me on the sign, which was awesome. This is me trying to leave my neighborhood and go north on Alma School, fighting all these numbnuts that don't know the law. So, and I found this is kind of a last minute, it doesn't belong on this slide, apologize for the format, but ambulance siren, 120 decibels. So screaming down Willis Road or any road, that's loud. Ingress, egress to the subject property. Alma School is, as an entrance, is only good for north-south traffic from Alma School. So the blue lines represent the ingress, and the red lines are the egress. So if you're coming north on Alma School, you can make a right-hand turn. You come south on Alma School, you can make a left-hand turn, no problem. But if you want to leave, you can only make a right. No chance of that changing. There's not going to be a left-hand turn out of the hospital to southbound Alma School. It's just not feasible. It's too close to the freeway. So 3 of the traffic flows, that's assuming someone wants to leave the property and go north, south, east, west, or come in from north, south, east, west. You have 8 possible flows. 5 of the flows are going onto Willis, which is 1 lane each way. They call it a feeder road. That's like a feeder fish. It's like a guppy type of road. It's really tight. And it's a 35 miles all the way, 35 mile an hour all the way to Arizona Avenue. So if you want to go southbound Alma School, westbound Willis, you have to come out onto Willis. If you want to go eastbound Willis, you have to go on Willis, which makes sense. If you want to come in on Willis, either way, you're going to have to use this driveway. This driveway is existing. There are no new driveways, as Banner stated previously. This driveway is really meant for the health center, right? These people will be winding through this parking lot to get to where they want to go. If we go back to traffic studies, 2006, this is the whole Parkland Crossing development, which was the current subject property and the apartments to the east. Back then, there were supposed to be condominiums. So 270 units made 1,583 trips per day. All this other stuff on top went away with that mixed use. It's being replaced with the health center and the hospital. So 8725 trips per day. So Banner is saying 4556 is the trips per day. That includes the clinic of 1,074. So 3482 is the new trips per day with the hospital. They based it on 156 beds. Well, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, or ITE, which is this abbreviation right there. This is their format, so to speak. They say you can also do hospitals on a square footage basis. So instead of using beds, if we used a 1,000 square foot and the 321,000 square foot for the hospital, you arrive at 5,297 trips per day, much more than the 3482. And then if you take that compared to the original 8,000 whatever, we're at 9,000 total trips. It's a 5% overage from that original plan, which, and I've got a little typo on this, I forgot to subtract out the existing condos, which became apartments. I guess I should have mentioned that the Lowe family, they built 383 apartments instead of 270 condos. So the math changes. So it's not an 11.6% increase in traffic, it's 16.7%. Most of my final comments, I know I'm running low on time. The Alma School is a D rating during rush hour, and it's dangerous.
I'm going to ask you to wrap.
Okay. Most of these have been answered by Banner with the left-hand, right-hand dedicated turn signals, which is terrific. The buses were answered, which is great. If we go back to what Kevin Mayo mentioned, that a PDP amendment notification would happen if Banner wanted to change. Does that mean we get the big orange signs and the letters to the neighbors? The public is notified if it's a PDP amendment notification? Or is it just you guys? Or just the zoning?
We'll let Kevin answer that. Is that your last comment?
Yeah, I can end on that.
Okay. Kevin, address that.
Mayor, council members, and to the kind of citizens, it would be this exact process. Same
Okay.
notification, same process.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Lee, it's your turn again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Three excellent presentations by my good friends and neighbors there. So just to sum up and drive these points home, these very compelling points, in zoning, we are looking at, we consider the 2018 PDP as a classic bait and switch. We had a very reasonable 2012 plan that the community supported. We were a hard yes on medical offices, and this somehow morphed into a hospital with a footprint or square footage more than twice as large without meaningful community input. Helicopter noise, as Mr. Azad mentioned, noise issues will be serious. Banner's presentation of this was oversimplified and I think disingenuous. Known helicopter safety issues pose hazards for both the neighborhood as well as risk for the city of Chandler that I think is important, very important to consider. And finally, our friend John Wilson talked about traffic and public safety. Alma School in Willis is a disaster right now. It needs to be dealt with now. It's already hazardous. And we also believe that Banner's traffic projections, John went into detail on this, are low and unrealistic. And speaking of notification, if we didn't drive this point home strongly enough, this is, here's another example. This is the 2012 notification from the city of Chandler on the zoning change, and it explicitly mentions medical offices twice. Nowhere on this is hospital mentioned, and nowhere on the 2012 ordinance that the city put out was the hospital mentioned. So, and this is very important. This is also an example of a notification that we did not receive this year. I did not receive one of these. I do remember getting this, and I read it and I immediately tossed it. I thought it sounded fine. Our proposal, real quick, our proposal has three main parts. The city of Chandler, we're going to flip this development scheme around on its head. I think what needs to happen, we think what needs to happen first is that Alma School needs to be fixed now, not in 2026. It's already a disaster. It is a terrifying intersection to maneuver through, as John mentioned. And Banner, go ahead and build those medical offices that you committed to in the 2012 rezoning process. Again, that idea is fine. It's non-controversial. That's fantastic. Go ahead and do it, and everyone will be happy. Finally, if a hospital is absolutely needed, and we're not sure it is, but if it is needed, it should be built at the size outlined in the 2012 rezoning plan, and it should be built without a helipad, for which there is, again, serious noise issues and serious public safety issues. I wanted to leave you with this. Remember, this is not an anti-development group. We've got you covered. We love jobs. We know you love jobs. We did a bit of research on the jobs issue identified by Banner. Banner had identified 450 jobs with employees working 2 or 3 shifts, changing shifts at 7, 3, and 7, for 347,000 square feet of medical offices. For that amount of square footage for medical offices, a U.S. federal government study projects 624 jobs for those medical offices that we're advocating for, that Banner wants, that Banner wanted at one time. So we have you covered there. We love jobs. We're telling you this, and because guess who works in medical offices? Doctors, nurses, specialists of all sorts. So the same people will be there. They'll just be in an office setting rather than a hospital setting. Again, thank you very much, and let's try to build a Chandler that works for all of us. We'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
We still have more speakers. So we have one more speaker in opposition, Mr., you can set that clock for 3 minutes. Michael Ostermeyer, if you could give us your name and address for the record.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Michael Ostermeyer. I live at 1361 South Camellia Court. That's between Alma School, Arizona Avenue, Willis, and Santan Freeway. My profession is an aviation safety officer for a federal agency. I'm recognized by the Interagency Community of Aviation Policy for the Government Services Administration. I have 41 years of helicopter experience. That includes over 35 years as a commercial instrument-rated helicopter pilot for the military, as well as civilian operations, including 135 and 91 operations. Now, I'm not concerned about the helicopter operations. The numbers that you've been presented, you need to dig further because that number is just a bogus number. It provides a broad statement, but does not break it down. You have to break down all those helicopter incidences, including aviation training, that includes air tours, that includes aerial application, that includes medevac helicopters, that includes news helicopters, you name it. That's a broad statement. That includes turbine engines, that includes recip engines. So you have to dig further before you take that number as a fact. The reason I oppose this is because of safety of traffic. I live off of Willis and Alma School. When it takes me 15 minutes to make a left-hand turn from Santan Freeway to Willis to go east on Willis, that's safety issues. Over the years, City of Chandler has provided Band-Aid fixes along Alma School. You've taken a 2006 study to bring before the City Council tonight that was updated in 2018, June of 2018. What's the problem with that? You don't address the schools that are in session during that time period. Families are out of town visiting loved ones or going to Disneyland or San Diego or something. You don't address the bus stops. You don't address the snowbirds of the local area. If you go down Alma School southbound or northbound from Santan Freeway, it's always traffic issues that's locking us up, gridlock, from all the way from Santan Freeway down to at least Queen Creek. It needs to be addressed by the city. That's not a Banner Health issue. That's the City of Chandler issue. Same thing with Willis. You've approved Wind Cove Foods. I've been at that residence for 15 years. And over the years, all we have done is put Band-Aid fixes on Willis. Since that 2012, we put in multi-family homes or apartments. We put in single-family dwellings on the south side of Willis. And oh, by the way, we put in more residential south of Queen Creek. So the City of Chandler needs to go back and revisit this traffic issue, traffic safety. I agree with part of their proposals, but I disagree with some of the facts that was presented to you on the helicopter safety because of my background. Further your questions.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we do have some cards in support. I got 3 speakers that want to speak. They can each have 7 minutes to speak. And with that, we'll go to the first speaker in support, Oscar Salazar. Oscar, if we get your name and address for the record.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Oscar Salazar. I live on 2435 East Redwood Court in Chandler, Arizona. I'm here in favor of the proposition to develop the medical center for Banner. My understanding is that Banner is a non-for-profit organization, and I don't believe that the intention of this hospital is with any lucrative interest, unless I'm incorrect. I have Banner representatives here. So I'm very well familiar with Banner Care and what they deliver, and I would love to see this facility to be built in our community. Banner gets really involved in the community. I invite everybody in this forum to visit some of the other Banner facilities across the valley and see how well they are developed and how well they take care of around their facilities. They're really good neighbors from what I've seen and from my experience. I can be one of those 80,000 people that Mr. Edwards spoke about that would love to have a Banner facility in Chandler and not be traveling across the valley looking for a Banner facility. I cannot speak too much about zoning because I'm not an expert, but I can say rather than seeing any other type of facilities or even a medical office, which I believe to have a medical office, you need to build hospitals first. I'd rather see a Banner facility. I think Banner facility offers to me and my family more safety. Having an extra helicopter in Chandler gives me more comfort level to say my family, if we have an emergency, can run really quick to Banner and have my patient transported quickly to a local hospital. No concerns again on traffic and safety. We have many other facilities in the Chandler area that have helipads, and including the Chandler Airport. So I don't believe safety is a concern on that regard. I don't either believe that Alma School should be a concern because Banner, I heard, is open to improve on Alma School. So should be taken off of the plate in the decision. So again, economic impacts, I believe Banner will create jobs, a lot of new jobs for employees, but also will create opportunities for current employees that work for Banner. And I don't have a count of how many employees that live in Chandler that work for Banner, but that's a great opportunity for those residents to stay here in this area and not be commuting to downtown or to other Banner facilities. Again, just to close my 7 minutes, I encourage everybody to visit any of the Banner facilities. Banner really cares, and they take pride of care about people, and I've fully researched who they are, and I'm very well knowledgeable about Banner, and I really support the development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You guys can clap because the other side clapped a lot, so we're all clapping here. Okay, next speaker is Mr. Bill Bruno, Bill with 1L. Hello, Mr. Bruno.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Bill Bruno. I live at 481 West Half Moon Way in Chandler. Been here since the 70s, and in fact, I've listened to a lot of these concerns, and I don't discount any of them. I've also heard, responses from Banner and their specialists, and it just reminds me that, when I want to go down to Tom's Barbecue and get a sandwich, sometimes I get frustrated because Alma School is filled with cars, and all these cars are coming from the houses that have been built around there. When I first came, it was basically cotton field, so it was real easy to get up and down Alma School. But because, in the interest of progress, we build houses, then with it come people and come traffic congestion. So just kind of interesting. I'd just like to make some quick points. The delivery of healthcare is changing, and Banner didn't talk much about that, but I served on committees at Chandler Regional Hospital, served on the Chandler Employee Health Insurance Trust. I served on the board for 12 years of the Maricopa Integrated Health System, and we have a level 1 trauma center in downtown Phoenix. And in fact, it's hard to believe I'm here speaking on behalf or in favor of Banner, since we competed with Banner and Dignity so much over those years. But to me, this is an important thing, and healthcare is changing, and hospitals, it's driven by economics. The payers, which are the insurance companies and the government, basically, are trying to drive these costs or control these costs. And the way you do it is by getting the best doctors and the best facilities and helping educate patients and treat them on a holistic manner and coordinating care. And that's what these networks are all about. Banner talked about its network with, I can't remember, it's 80,000 or whatever members, that it's like an HMO. Basically, you go to Banner or, you're going to pay so much that you might not even have insurance. But they also are listed as a approved facility and approved providers for many other health plans. So about, I don't know, I've had the same doctor, started out here in Chandler, a few blocks from my home, let's say for 30 years, and about 2 or 3 years ago, that group merged into Banner. And I didn't like it at first. It was kind of some different things, but what I really like is the fact that they have an electronic health record. And the old days where you'd write on charts, you know, those are gone, but now there's a health record that's every provider that you see will enter data into that record. And so I know that if I have an emergency and I go to a Banner hospital, that even though my doctor is fishing or golfing or in Hawaii or wherever he goes all those times that I want to see him, they can pull up on the screen and see my entire health history. And that's very important. And so I want a Banner facility in this community. And I don't want to have to drive all the way to Mesa to put up with that. I don't like going to Mesa. So there's another point, I guess, the economic thing. I've been down here over the years talking to you guys about my taxes and how important economic development is. And, they're talking 600 or 700 jobs in an industry that is basically recession-proof. And that's pretty great. And, all the carpenters and the construction people and, others are going to have, as the economy goes up and down, the jobs come and go, but healthcare is always there, and those are great jobs. And did I hear $700 million of economic impact? That's pretty big. So one last story. We've been living in this last house since the early 90s, and they came around one day and they go, hey, we're going to build a fire station behind you. And it was like, I don't know, two football fields or something on the same street. And I got my hair on fire. I was all razzled up. But, this isn't right. You're going to have a bunch of fire trucks and sirens and loudspeakers and stuff like that. And I said, I lived here. When I bought my house here, there was going to be cows there. And now you're telling me you're going to put a fire station. It's just not fair. You can't do this to me. But, I was convinced. The chief came over and talked to me and some of the neighbors. And so for the good of Chandler and whatever, we kind of went with it. And we have had no problems. So I've got, once in a while we hear a siren, but we don't worry about it. Sometimes there's a helicopter drops down because it's near a transfer point or something, and that doesn't bother me either. So to me, Chandler can be healthier and better with a Banner hospital in it. I truly believe that. And I know there's lots of issues, and I agree with some of the speakers. It's kind of up to you guys to figure that out. But I hope you can figure it out and that we can have a hospital. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Okay. Next speaker, Tracy Feist. Name and address, please.
Tracy Fate, 458 West Ironwood Drive in Chandler. I'm one of those 80,000 people that do have to go to a Banner facility, and I would love to have a Banner facility in Chandler so that I could have somewhere closer for my family to go. I've also been a nurse for 33 years. I have worked at hospitals across the United States, from small community hospitals that Banner is projecting to do this, to level 1 trauma facilities. And I know that gentleman was worried about other hospitals coming in. All the community hospitals that I've worked at around the country truly usually send out patients they don't bring in patients. It's not going to be a level 1 facility. Level 1 facilities receive the helicopters. But I can honestly tell you that in my 33 years, I've never seen anything but a helicopter land at a hospital. There's never news choppers that land or any other choppers. It's truly medical helicopters. And it is a small number when we're talking about those community settings. Desert is where I've worked for several years now. And I can tell you that every single winter, we are scouring to find beds to put people, because every hospital, not just ours, but every other hospital in the valley is booked, and patients are waiting. You've seen the news reports that patients wait 12 hours or more to get a bed. We need more hospitals in the valley. We need more beds to put people, because nobody should have to wait those long waits. And as a hospital, I can say it's not our fault that they make those long waits, because we're trying to treat everyone. But if we got more hospital beds into the valley, we wouldn't have those long waits, and we could truly treat each patient. That's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all of the speakers. Did promise the applicant a chance to get up and address some of those questions and comments and assertions of the folks that are opposed to this. So now would be the time to do that.
There's been a lot said, but there's probably one thing that's most important to be said, and I don't like going to Mesa either. So you can tell that former city attorney of Mesa, that statement. I certainly appreciate this process. This is what it means to be a citizen. This is what it means to be an elected official, to evaluate these concerns, to get that feedback, to discuss. And I think the best reflection is, while there is disagreement, I can still visit with John Wilson and Carolyn Foster before the meeting and shake hands and joke around. This isn't a personal thing. We can act civilly. That's a process that I appreciate from the neighbors' point of view. I've had a lot of ugly zoning cases over time, and I can't say they've all been as civil as this one. So I appreciate their demeanor and manner they've handled this. I'd like to address a couple of things straight off the bat. There is a certain standard of review that comes along with preliminary development plan processes. It's not a question of a market need. It's not a question of appropriateness. Those are other questions maybe for other types of applications. What this is about architecture, landscaping, access, parking, grading, drainage, those types of things. It was ironic that Mr. Lee put up an image of Banner Baywood and said this isn't appropriate next to residential areas, when there's literally residential homes right across the street from Banner Baywood. Also a hospital that's twice as large as the hospital that we're proposing here today. Nancy mentioned that this was, I think, a switch. I heard somewhere else someone say bait and switch, or that this was too large. I think it sort of ignores the fact that when we did this case back in 2012, this is pulled from the staff report in 2012. I just pulled it today. You'll notice that talked about phase 1, phase 2, and a future phase 3. And this is the language from the staff report in 2012, where it talks about—
Can you give us a second to get that on our screens? Okay.
Oh, my apologies, yeah.
So start over with that again.
This is the site plan that's in your staff report from 2012. It talks about phase 1, phase 2, in some vacant space. Now, we had some ideas of what that could possibly be, but no firm or specific commitment, to the point that in the own staff report, it talks about a concept plan was shown for phase 3. However, the ultimate design, layout, buildings, freestanding pads, architecture, signage will be determined through a separate PDP application. That's this application. That's exactly what's happening. This isn't a bait and switch. We didn't have those details or the specifics of it. My office has touched this site 5 times. Meritage Homes for condos, Zaremba for apartments, Parkland for the commercial development, Banner in 2012, and now Banner today. And every one of those times, the things have changed. And it's not because they had a devious intent. It's because over time, the uses, needs, necessities, they evolve. This isn't a bait and switch, and I hate that that's the image that gets conveyed. But it's Banner's needs have changed. There's a hole in Banner service area. You have a site in Mesa, a site in Gilbert. There's a hole in Chandler for what Banner does. In fact, In the PowerPoint presentation in 2012, I just literally pulled this from our own files. We showed phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 to be determined. We knew at some point we would have to come back and present something to you.
Mid-rise overlay on phase 3.
With mid-rise, with the intent, and that was part of the zoning case back then. So I'm sorry to create that perception. That's not what we want to do. This isn't a bait and switch, but that is how the process works. And more importantly, I want to just point out that we have here with us the pilot who flies these helicopters to our facility. So if there is any specific question regarding FAA approvals or flight paths or frequency of accidents or the heights that they pass over buildings, I don't want to pretend to answer those questions. He can easily answer them, but the materials and information we provided to you since the beginning is based on their information. John Wilson referred to car accidents, and I regret to hear that there was an accident as recently as yesterday. But then I think to myself, if there's a car accident, isn't it more appropriate that there's a hospital across the street that can serve that? The concerns of...
Can we let him finish? He didn't interrupt you guys. Can he say his piece? I mean, really? Come on.
The frequency of traffic that's in this area is an existing condition that predates Banner's development. And if we're worried about a hospital today, shouldn't we be worried about what the alternatives could be? If they want you to build a 167,000 square foot medical office, you'll have significantly greater trips, a greater parking demand. But if you don't build that, you build a retail center, you'll have more parking trips, more parking demand, and more trips. This is actually less intensive than what you could otherwise have on this property. I appreciated that the fire chief referred to 8% of these trips being ambulatory. Our data showed about 5%, and those are very, very similar range. So there's not a great frequency of ambulatory trips in this area. I agree, there are some flaws. There are flaws in the traffic design today, but I don't think that's intentional. I think that's part of growing a city. You grow, you plan, you design, you have budgets, you project out when those improvements will be made. I think in this case, it's been accelerated because this project has brought that to attention. And maybe there's a way in through your budgetary process as you evaluate that down the road that you can maybe improve or accelerate those timings. But this isn't because Chandler's failed the city. It's because the city's growing rapidly, and this is probably within your projected timeline. Banner, on its own will, is willing to put some of those improvements in that property, on the street, and since the last hearing 2 weeks ago at the intersection, that directly addresses Mr. Ostermeyer's concern about Willis traffic. And more importantly, I appreciate his statement that this is completely safe as it relates to helicopters. There was a comment from Mr. Lee that this was a hard yes, everybody supported this back then. But I looked at the staff report back then, and we held 2 neighbor meetings, and nobody attended from the community back then. And they had 1 call in support. So it wasn't like there was a lot of citizen buy-in back then. And in this case, we've done more outreach than we did even back before then. I think about a hospital as an appendage to a helipad as an appendage to a hospital, an ambulance as an appendage to a hospital. In many ways, it's if you're a homeowner and you have the same right to put a shed in your backyard or a pool or the types of trees that you want to do. As a hospital feature and a function, you need the full benefit and those things that come along with it. At the end of the day, this isn't a competition case about Dignity being so close, 2 miles away. We don't make land use decisions whether I like Neaters or Panera. They both can be at the same intersection. This isn't a decision based on is there a market need. This is a decision based on do they satisfy the parking requirements? Do they satisfy the engineering requirements? Do they have the required planting? Do they have the sufficient height? Do they meet all the setbacks? Is their architecture sufficient? Is it attractive? Is it a detriment? That's what this case is about. And that's the basis in the legal review that this body is entitled to consider. I appreciate your time. I do have with me Chuck Wright from Kimley Horn, who prepared the traffic study, can answer, I think, a lot of that misinformation I recently heard, as well as the pilot, who can answer any specific questions you have related to helicopter flights.
Just a couple questions I want to clarify a few things. Mr. Azad disputed pretty much every point you guys made on the helipad, so I'd like you to, again, go through some of the information on the helipad. He disputed the trips. He disputed some other things. He disputed that you have said that there's not going to be helicopters housed there. He disputed that. Address those issues.
I think Mr. Azad said on the record he's a pilot, but not a helicopter pilot, an airplane pilot, which is a big distinction between those 2 functions and operations and understandings as well. We simply don't have a fueling facility. We don't have any hangar. These places are stored elsewhere. I don't know where Mr. Assad pulls the data, or I can't project where that came from. All I can say is based on our experience at our own hospitals and our facilities, these are honest answers. Questions related to flight paths, how tall they fly over buildings, that's probably a better question for Kip and our pilot.
I'm going to refer to our pilot, but I would tell you, we went back and checked and double-checked our figures as late as yesterday, just to be sure. We're very sure with what we've said. We've given you what we believe is the accurate, what is the accurate information for the number of flights, and Adam is right. You can't take a helipad and change it into a heliport. You have to have fueling, you have to have fire suppression. There's a whole bunch of things you have. This is designed to land and leave. That's all it can ever be.
So when you need a helicopter, who do you actually call for the helicopter? Where does it come from?
We have, well, I don't know. I don't know. We call our helicopter
We're
service.
gonna find out.
Guy services a number of our facilities. And they call them in.
Hate to put you on the spot, but you're here. And
Evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Jeffrey Hurd. I'm a pilot with PHI Aeromedical. I'm also an instructor pilot. I work primarily out of Phoenix, but I did have flown in Chandler for 15 years. As a matter of fact, I did my training at Chandler Municipal, so I'm pretty familiar with the area and the noise abatement issues. I'm sorry, what was your question?
so the question is, when they do need that helicopter that's not housed at the facility, according to Banner, they're housed elsewhere. Who do they call and where does that helicopter come from so that it can pick up that critically injured or needing patient?
So to answer that, let me back up a little bit and kind of describe why we do this type of call. So typically when we, in this sort of hospital level 2 trauma, we don't bring patients to them necessarily. We can, that's certainly a possibility, but more than likely what's going to happen is we're going to transport a patient out to a higher level facility. And I know somebody mentioned traveling to Chandler Regional, which is a mile away. Typically that's not kind of what we're looking for. So we're not going to, most of the time, transport a level 2 patient to a level 1 trauma. What we're looking for is a specialty. So we have a neonatal team, for example, at Sky Harbor, and they specialize specifically in neonatal transports or maternal transports. And those are the kind of specialized care that we'd be doing more out of this hospital, or flying up to, for example, Heart Hospital or that type of thing for Phoenix Children's. So who they're going to call depends on what kind of specialty they need. We have helicopters, our company specifically has helicopters in Casa Grande, Mesa, Buckeye, and Santan Valley would probably service this particular area the most. So, and they would call our dispatch center and then a receiving facility, and we'd facilitate doctor-to-doctor handoff transports.
Thank you. Proceed.
I'm only available to answer any questions that you have.
Any other questions of the applicant or anybody for that matter from the council?
Go ahead.
Okay, I saw 3 of you kind of flinch. Does anybody have any more questions, comments, concerns? Start with you, Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. I saw some discrepancy between Ms. Ryan's Plan A and the plans that we're seeing from the developer. Can you address that, please?
May I address it?
Sure.
Quickly. In the instances of when you have a development and a blank space that you'll come back for, sometimes staff will instruct you to prepare a conceptual layout. That doesn't mean that that's an approved plan. That means you have to come back in with an idea. And so in the staff report, as presented to you, we showed the vacant space back in 2012, knowing that that would be a future phase to come back through a separate entitlement process.
The mayor, I believe the exhibit she put up there was the site plan for the 2012 and then the kind of condition out of the 2012 PDP. So the PDP in 2012 only applied to the 10 acres to the south. It didn't apply to the property that is currently under review for the hospital. Any changes to that 2012 10-acre piece would have required coming back and doing a new PDP. But similar to the exhibit that showed the condition that future phase 3 would require a PDP anyway, that's what we're here for tonight, is that PDP. Don't think that totally answered the question, did it? A lot of acronyms.
Yeah.
So, the STIP from 2012 referenced that phase 1 and phase 2 that were shown in that 2012 PDP, and it only applied to that. Any change to that?
Mrs. Ryan? You agree with what he's saying? Okay. Thank you.
So, here.
Vice Mayor.
So I got confused on that then. So phase 1 from 2012 was built, right?
Correct.
And phase 2 was not, but for the 2018 plan is basically doing phase 2 and 3 now. Is that right?
It is an amendment to the phase 2 of the 2012, because what used to be a 2-story expansion of the medical clinic is going to be a future expansion of one, I think they said 1 or 2 more modules of the medical clinic, and then the hospital tower with phase 1 and phase 2 of the hospital tower.
Okay, yeah, now I understand. All right.
Councilmember Hartke.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is more directed to the city, not towards you. And I think you've said, and we agree, that you've inherited a bit of a problem with traffic. And I live off of Alma School, a little bit north of Chandler Boulevard, but that's my common route. I'm probably once a day, 5 times a week, heading towards the 202 and south. So I get it. We've got a traffic problem. I do think that the ribbon that you've tentatively promised me, promised our neighbors, will help quite a bit. I think the widening of that road, but beyond that, I'd like to ask our city manager, as I just conferred with, we have a traffic study coming up, a master plan. Can you talk to us about that, please?
Yes, through the mayor, Councilmember Hartke. As you're aware, the latest master transportation plan for the city of Chandler was done about a decade ago. And as recently, I think it was about a month ago or maybe 2, council did authorize a contract with Kimley Horn and Associates to update that master transportation plan. That process will be underway in the course of the next year. They will be looking at current traffic volumes, existing land uses, projected land uses, and updating that transportation plan for the city. It will also help to set some priorities going forward in terms of needs in our transportation network. They will also be having public involvement as part of that plan, so there will be opportunities for the public to get involved in terms of the update to that plan. So we will be looking at that over the course of this next year and then coming back to council with those recommendations from that plan.
When do we anticipate kicking that plan off, and what might be timeline opportunities for our community along Alma School to have input?
We will have to, let me get that, and we can get that information out to the neighborhood with a more definitive answer than I could give you right now.
Okay, so this is definitely an opportunity for everyone in this room, whether you want the hospital or not, who agrees that Alma School is an issue that we need to look at and address for us to participate and have a say. And that's not just a discussion in which people say this and then we go ahead and do something else. It's based upon real needs, real traffic, and I think we can all agree that Alma School is a road that needs attention. So, and when do we anticipate that being completed, the study?
I know the study timeframe was a year, and so when we issued that notice to proceed, had to have been recently. So we're just very much in the very infancy of kicking that off and getting with the consultant and laying out that timeline and the work that they'll be completing over the course of the next year. That's why I'm not definitive on those times yet.
Sure. So beyond, if indeed if this does or does not pass, if it does, we've got some alleviation with left-hand turns and additional lanes south. But the longer-term picture, which is really whether our helicopter pilot in the back or everyone else is concerned about, we've initiated a process to address that and get public input to look at this and have a serious deep dive into Alma School and other clog points across our city.
That would be correct, Councilman.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to echo a little bit on Councilmember Hartke's.
Councilmember McClymonds.
Thank you, sir. Chandler is 86% built out. We're landlocked, so all that's left is lots that have been sitting next to neighbors for a long period of time. And so one of the challenges that we're going to face over the next 5-10 years is there'll be projects that'll come, and every one of those projects is going to bring traffic in some capacity or another. So banner or no banner, there's going to be traffic, and we're going to have to continue to deal with these issues along the way. There's no doubt, I live in South Chandler. I've lived there for 15 years. My office is on the Price Corridor. I frequent Alma School, and it's not a crown jewel in our city. So I just wanted to echo, I'm personally committed. I can't speak for the rest of mayor and council. If there's appropriate time and budget to look for opportunities to improve Alma School. The city has done an incredible job budgeting. The South Chandler arterial streets are budgeted to be finished in the next 5 years, which is awesome for a city of 260,000 population to almost fully be built out arterial. But Alma School there's room for improvement. I personally am just committed, and I just wanted to make that general statement.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Regardless of the outcome of the vote, Alma School needs work, and I know this isn't a meeting, but we have a lot of interested residents here about the widening of Alma School. How fast can we move that up? Just cut to the chase. How fast can we move that project up? How fast can we make it 6 lanes from 202 to Germain at minimum, from 202 to Pecos at minimum, and how can we move that quickly? I get it. We got a year for a study. And I know it's all got to fit. And I don't envy the traffic department or your job, but if you could answer that, that'd be great.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Stewart, appreciate the question. This is excellent timing. We're right at the beginning of the next budget cycle, and our capital improvement team will be meeting here in the next month, and then we'll be talking about all of those projects that are in priority order, I guess, for the next 10-year CIP.
I think this one just got moved up.
Pardon?
In priority.
Pardon?
I think this may be moving up in priority.
That's something we can certainly bring to you with the options for funding that, or options of removing projects that are currently in our CIP and replacing it with this. So we can certainly do that as we go into this next budget cycle. We'll do that.
Thanks, Susan. Other questions or comments from the council? If not, council.
I do want to say
Councilmember
something.
Wong.
Yeah. Originally, I want to make a motion, but I'm not going to make a motion. I just want to say to the residents, we met, we exchanged ideas, and I have been listening. And I think I make it clear, I think I'm in favor of this project. But again, I'm elected to represent you, and so it's really, really difficult for me. I have been yes and no for the whole night, actually for almost 5 days already. And I want, the reason I am in favor of this project, I was thinking, okay, if I were you, what would I think? I don't mind there's a hospital just right up my neighbor. Because if one day I need to use it, I want it to be as close as possible. And also about the helicopter, I understand it's noisy, but as long as it has no safety concern, I understand it saves somebody's life. So I went to a friend, he lived, the railroad just right behind her house, and there's a mountain. And the first I stayed there for 3 nights. And the first night I was there, I was, ooh, what's going on? Like, it's like an earthquake or something, or, yeah. The second night I'm okay. The third night it's okay. And I asked her, so how do you live like this? Yeah. Okay, so, and here in Arizona, here in Chandler, most of the time we are stay inside. We don't really hear the sound. I'm sorry, maybe I offend some of you, but that's how I experience. Actually, if you go on the street, go on any major street, standing there, you cannot stand it. It's so loud, even without a helicopter or anything. So, yeah, so I'm sorry, today I think I'm going to in favor of the project. Yeah.
Council, any other questions of applicant or anybody? Then a motion would be in order on which way you want to go on this project.
Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
So I will qualify this, but I want to first thank the citizens for coming out, being engaged. The last couple of weeks, we've had quite a few citizens being engaged, and it is very exciting. Unfortunately, I think in our December docket, we're not going to have as many here, but if you do want to still stay engaged, come out to our December meeting so you can see what else goes on in the city. I also want to thank the applicant. You've worked a lot with the citizens, a lot of public meetings. There's been a lot of iteration through this life cycle, and you've been very flexible. So thank you also. To me, this again goes back to the last question I had really, which was what is this different from 2012 to 2018? What is allowed, the uses, the C2. And again, this seems all within the PDP requirements. It meets it's a good use. I believe that this helps. I know it wasn't talked about, but I do believe it drives competition. I do believe there's a need to have Banner and Chandler. I love Dignity too. They're great community partners with us. But having more hospitals, I don't see that being a problem. And I always see that being a benefit and a life improving benefit to our citizens. Traffic is a mess. So I've driven that quite a bit myself. I live in South Chandler. Also, Southeast Chandler, about almost a stone throws away from Gilbert. So I take a lot of different routes to make sure nobody's following me. You're supposed to do that, I was told. So I take a lot of different routes, and I've been taking Al School a lot lately. And yes, it's a mess. And I think a couple other council members have exhibited some of the interests that we have in really addressing Alma School, even before new development. And again, kudos to Banner for stepping up and being willing to make some investments. A Band-Aid, if you will, since we're talking about a health facility, to try to help immediately with some of those traffic issues. So for that reason, I do believe this is a good fit for our community and will benefit everybody in Chandler. So with that, I move for the preliminary development plan, PDP 18-0009, Banner Project A, for site layout and building architecture for the development of a hospital campus, including a medical tower on approximately 18.3 acres located at the northeast corner of Alma School and Willis Road. With the additional stipulation that I don't know how to word this, any other future changes to the PDP would have to come before the council and planning and zoning.
He's in the middle of a motion. He wants some verbiage on a stipulation.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, potential condition number 13 for the PDP. Any expansion beyond the attached exhibits shall require reapplication and approval of a new preliminary development plan.
Yes. Thank you, Kevin.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor, second by Council Member Rowe.
Before we vote, I want to add one more comment. I have heard from the residents that Banner Hospital did not reach out enough. So I don't, maybe you say you did, but that's how the residents feel. So maybe next time, or maybe tell other people that maybe you can do a better job and reach out more and have more communication, because you will be located in their neighborhood, and a good relationship with neighbor is always important. Thank you.
Question of the motion maker. There was some discussion earlier this evening on the behavioral health use, and they're not doing that, but I didn't know if you were going to include a stipulation that any change of something of that nature would also have to come back? Or would that be
I think
appropriate?
that'd be a solution, because I don't know if we could define to that level of stipulation on it.
If I may, Mayor, Vice
Yes.
Mayor, that is going beyond the PDP. That would be a more appropriate condition under the zoning, unless the applicant were to agree, but it really is a zoning issue.
Okay. Other comments from the council? Okay, council, you do have a motion and a second. Council, now's the time. Councilmember Hartke.
I just wanted to follow up with that is, would the applicant agree to that? It's not appropriate for us, but would the applicant agree in good faith to say that this would not be a psychiatric substance abuse? You said it didn't seem to follow a pattern, but the sake of being a good neighbor and concerns.
You have to be careful how I word it. I mean, you say no substance abuse patient, obviously, sometimes some will arrive in the ED. So as long as you're not trying to restrict that, we would agree to not ever convert the inpatient portion to a behavioral health facility. Because quite frankly, it would be a terrible conversion. It's full of medical gas pipes and everything else. None of that can be used in so I think we have to figure out how to word that properly.
I would ask the motion maker and the second would be amenable to that
I
language.
guess the other thing, we might have a patient.
Yeah,
it won't be a behavioral.
how we could word it.
Behavioral, it would not ever become a licensed behavioral health
Yep.
facility. There will be occasions when there's an inpatient and there has a substance abuse issue. It might be even from the neighborhood.
Kevin, do you want to give them the language?
Mayor, it's pretty bad if I can't even read my own chicken scratch now. Something to the effect of the hospital should not be redesigned to be converted into a behavioral health or substance abuse facility. Something of that nature.
A licensed behavioral
health or
substance abuse facility. I would agree with that stipulation.
It's not, it's just adding it. There's a stipulation number 14.
Mayor.
Council, questions, comments, concerns? Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Edwards, can I ask if this is approved, can we match the foliage and match the entryway into Ocotillo at that on your side of the street to match what's across the other side of the street? That's a beautiful edging or parkway with greenage and things like that. We'd like that to match so it looks similar.
I would have to look. I mean, we will do our best. We have a landscape design. Part of it, we have to have a view in. There has to be view to the signs, view to the exits. So
I think
some of it may or may not.
I think the answer is we have a landscape plan in the PDP booklet. That's what we have to conform to. If that's an administrative decision that staff can make post the hearing, that's something we would explore with them.
Thank you.
I don't want to try to redesign it in my head.
Other comments from the council? Council, please vote the motion.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. All right. Okay, council, the next item on the agenda is unscheduled public appearances. Anybody wishing to address the council on any item that's not on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. Okay, council will just take about a 2-minute break here while the council chamber is clear, and then we'll proceed with the rest of the meeting.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes, unscheduled public, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. You can hear the concern, Nancy Ryan, 1064 West Enfield. This is just a quick idea for the council to consider. Heard the concern about helicopters in the C2 zone. Possibly use the overhead? There we go. So we had the lack of any use permit required for C1 and C2. We really think you need to provide some leadership or guidance, or at least explain what ancillary means and under what conditions ancillary it should be allowed. I took the time to go through your adjacent cities. This is Tempe. They're heliports, helipads, whatever term you want to call it. In the majority of their commercial uses, it's a use permit, not allowed in their residential commercial zone. Here's Mesa. Heliports starts with a conditional use permit at the LC, their C2, goes into the general commercial and on. Gilbert, it's got heliport, helipad for your commercials zones. It starts at the, looks like the SC or GC level. And actually, the most prepared of all of these, I was kind of impressed. Phoenix actually has some specific things they look for in their heliport, helistop, or airstrip. And they're asking for an aerial photo equal to show the approach and departure routes, location of residences, schools, churches, and hospitals, used for open assembly. 3, a plan showing the location of the adjacent land use and the size in detail. Elevated helistops are also, should be attested by a licensed structural engineer and would support that helicopter using the facility. And then the 5th thing is they actually turn in their notice of landing area proposal for the FAA. So I'm just going to hand these over to the clerk. Maybe they can share them with you. I'd like the opportunity for staff to approach looking at a code change to start to address this.
We'll make sure they get a copy of that. Thank you. Unscheduled public appearance on any item that was not on the agenda. Not on the agenda items. We'll be done in just a minute, and then you can ask. Okay, council, current events, just a couple things this evening. Do want to mention that the museum dedication is coming up soon. I'd like to invite the public and the council, obviously, to the Chandler Museum dedication on Saturday, December 8th at 9:30 a.m. This has been a long time in the making, and I think the wait will be worth it. Located just west of the Chandler Mall next to the historic Price House, this new facility boasts 5,000 feet of exhibition space along with classroom and additional meeting spaces. You can learn more in the coming weeks at the city's website, chandleraz.gov, but since council will not meet again until December 10th, I wanted to make a note of it tonight. Do want to also talk about the Parade of Lights and tree lighting. Our annual Parade of Lights and tumbleweed tree lighting ceremony, which has been going on every year since 1957, will be Saturday, December 1 in A.J. Chandler Park, downtown Chandler. The event begins at 4:30 p.m. with a visit from Santa for the Vice Mayor, live entertainment, arts and crafts, and amusement rides. The parade will begin at 6:45 p.m. The council will be in the parade with the tree lighting ceremony to follow at approximately 8 p.m. Hope to see you there. Another event, a lot of events, council. The annual Wolfstock event will be Saturday, November 17th from 9 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at Tumbleweed Park. This popular event is great for dogs and dog lovers, for all of you dog lovers. It includes a number of pet-related vendors, entertainment, and food. There will be also pet adoptions, pet caricatures, and of course, a pet psychic. Got to learn a little bit more about the pet psychic. As always, you can learn more at chandleraz.gov. The final thing, council, I was disappointed to learn that Phoenix had voted to not pay their dues this year, which effectively removes them from the Arizona League of Cities and Towns. We've had a good coalition at the cities and towns. We worked on a lot of issues the last 30 years, and we brought a lot of value to our members. So I was very disappointed to see the largest city in the state opt out currently. Hopefully with the mayor election coming up in March, the new mayor will see the value in the league, as all the past mayors of Phoenix have seen, and get back in the league. I believe 91 united cities and towns is better than 90 united cities and towns. So hopefully that'll work its way out. I certainly want to work with Phoenix, and I know when I was president of the league, which I have not been president since August, we had some similar issues with Phoenix, and I made it a point to go meet with different folks in Phoenix, including council members, and we always seem to work our issues out. So we're hoping that those issues get worked out. With that, Councilmember McClymans.
I was going to save, I knew this would be a long meeting anyways, but I did want to point this out. I'm a Chandler compadre, and we're a member-run charity organization that raises a ton of money for local children's charities. And this Saturday, Rock the Cause, we've already sold $620,000 in table sales, and we position ourselves probably for $900,000 with a reach goal of $1 million. I mean, we've really turned this fundraiser into something that's going to make a big impact for children in our community. So I just wish us the best that we can hit our reach goal and actually raise $1 million in one night for disadvantaged kids in our community. That's all I got.
The slogan should be 1 million in one. 1 million in one night.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. To Chandler, if you have watched this video clear to this moment, happy Thanksgiving, and we'll be back after that. And if you can, volunteer at the holidays and come out and ring a bell for the Salvation Army and or donate a turkey. There's many organizations that need your help. And to that, have a great holiday.
Thank you, Councilmember. Vice Mayor Lopez.
Thank you, Mayor Tiptrini. I would like to recognize the Perry High School mountain biking team. So not a lot of people know that in Chandler we do have a mountain biking team. My son happens to be a member, and they did they closed out their season last week over at White Tanks, where again I continue to try to work through my sunburn. But they had a great season. Every member of the team finished their race. They were able to get all their points, and this is the first year that they moved up out of 6 years of existence. I'm sorry. This is their first time. It's going to be embarrassed, thankfully, hopefully. They actually placed 10th out of the 15 schools for their first year being in Division I. And I'll tell you, some of the kids out there, they're amazing. They're supermen on those bikes. So we're very, very pleased with the overall Perry mountain biking team. And if you have a child that's in high school or in 8th grade, it is open to them, boys and girls. And it was a great experience for the kids and for the parents to get out there. So thank you very much. That's all I have.
I'm retiring from jogging, but I would still bike.
Coaches, there's no age limit on coaches, so you can come out anytime, and they run the trails with the kids every weekend.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wong.
Last Saturday, after the mayor's safe event, the staff and I and the residents have a walking tour of the Veterans OS Park, and we have highlight the amenities and the water recharge basins. So we have about 60 people attending, and I appreciate everybody coming. And next year, we will also have another one. It will also be at the beginning of November. So that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Hartke.
Thank you, Mayor. A few things. We just kicked off an initiative called Change Up Campaign to discourage giving to panhandlers. And there's information on your screen. The gist behind this is panhandlers in our community say that our police are nice and our citizens are extremely generous. We would like to apply that generosity to uses that actually help people who are homeless rather than depositing it in people's pockets without knowing where it would go. So opportunity to give, to actually help people who are homeless get off the street. And second and lastly, since Councilmember Rowe kind of covered the last, is this Saturday, there are two tremendous opportunities, exciting events going on at our Tumbleweed Park. The first is I'm an ex officio member of our Chandler Sister City program, and one of our sister cities is Tullamore, Ireland, and we are having an Irish tea at the Tumbleweed Rec Center. There's information on there if you are interested. I believe there are still opportunities to participate. And lastly, 2.B, it is the Chuck Wagon Cook-Off from 9 until 4 at the Tumbleweed Ranch. And this is an opportunity to see where the food trucks came from and to have some great food at the same time. Thank you, Mayor.
It's also an opportunity to see Councilmember Hartke wearing a cowboy hat.
Doesn't happen every day.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you. That was quite a meeting. We've had a couple of them here recently. I'm just absolutely impressed and thoroughly, it makes me proud of my city when I see this kind of turnout for, and the emails that I receive and the phone calls and just the involvement. It's just impressive. So I want to comment about that. But moreover, more importantly, or not more importantly, but I want to also add, our Chandler Performing Arts Center is having a banner year. I want to commend the director, Michelle McLennan, for her efforts to basically, she's essentially doubled ticket sales over the last year through broadening and deepening the impact and reaching out to the community through social media and things like that, and upgrading patron amenities. She's done a phenomenal job of improving the number of shows that are there, as well as she's had, I think they've had like 25 sold out shows, which is unheard of. So I want to commend them. And if you haven't been out to a show, it's an absolute blast. There's so many of them that I missed. It's been a banner year. Oh. I didn't, he got me. He got me. I just read her. So we have 4 schools competing this weekend in high school football playoffs. Valley Christian, Perry, Castile, and of course, our mayor's alma mater, Chandler High, will be competing. And football playoffs and Chandler go together like peanut butter and jelly around here. So try to make it out to one of the games, and that's all I got.
Go Wolves. City Manager.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
With that, meeting adjourned. Heather.